my original question was, and I'll just lay it out here, if we're judging work based on the quality of work or how much influence a supposed artist has, and if we're following artists that follow pop culture, I see this in
no one's immune to it. So
yeah, I see
everyone is.
I see this in most elements of music.
Right.
If we're saying yes, if we're saying that the work is good because the person doing so is with it, with the times, which is ironically not a statement that is with the times, then if that answer is yes, I'd say that that's pretty vast, because what else are they producing other than what's akin to what's hot now? You're not looking for something that people are going to find fulfilling. You're going to create something that people are going to find enjoyment out of.
With something like that, that's more, you're letting people know that the oversaturation has done its job, and you have people out there.
Yeah.
Well, you ultimately have people out there, and mind you, I sometimes feel this way. I know one really good author who I think I've talked with you about, Salman Rushdie. He's written quite a few books where it is so jam-packed with just about every kind of cultural reference you could think of, from Darth Maul to Werner Herzog to Barack Obama. He's able to stuff it within half a sentence and then add in a little bit more for the rest of the sentence. But I guess this also goes to a different point, kind of leading off into a different segue. I guess, what do you both think about the arts serving as a way to unveil human ingenuity? So just, and in a way, this could lean into both the categories, which they do intertwine between euphoria and propaganda. But when it comes to somebody that just lets all their creative juices out, like, yeah,
so
just
my stance in what I've been saying then. So because I've been mentioning, like, create to create, and one should not conform.
Well, I think everyone conforms and doesn't conform in certain specs.
Yeah.
But I think what comes to my mind when you mention that is, like, little kids when they scribble on paper, or they spin in circles to do a dance, or they screech random notes to sing.
Yeah, that's not art, okay? That's bullshit.
It's art, like, art is raw self-expression.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they suck at it.
Self-expression is not independent of your viewpoints.
That's right.
And it's not independent of your biases. And
well, I guess
we all want to think we're all uppity and we can be independent of that, but we really, really can't. The closest we can is to being able to acknowledge our biases.
As a counterpoint, hold on. As a counterpoint to that, though, as much as people who kind of work behind their computer screens as I do, and I'm not saying I do this, but whether it be any form of art that basically doesn't really require you to face an audience, like publishing, for example, it's really easy to let ego get in the way of constructive criticism. Okay. So because if you're just continuously pumping out work and, well, no one's telling you to stop, well, then your work can't be bad. But, then again, it very much can be. I think kind of a counterpoint to that, and this may not be effective, but I'm just kind of throwing this out there as a hypothetical. But if you were to systematically ignore any semblance of criticism, constructive or otherwise, hate, suggestion, like if you were just to block it all out, and you were to be in one's own little bubble, again, I'm not saying it would work in the same manner of, an artist interacting with his or her audience, but it would definitely work in the whole artist-art relationship of continuously creating for the sake of creating, because in a way you have no one to please but yourself. Now, this is a very, very internalized way of doing so, and would probably contribute to a lot of fuck-uppery along the way, because you'd be in a constant battle cycle of continuously trying to outdo your own self, which is also not good.
But I think what's interesting about that point, you said trying to please yourself, but how do you please yourself? You agree with your own biases.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're caught in a constant loop of agreeing with your own biases and I guess pleading ignorance to never having to change because you're never having to see the criticism, then it could, as a hypothesis, work. But who would ever do that? No one would ever do that.
What's the hypothesis?
The hypothesis is if you were to shut yourself in your own artistic bubble.
But what is the hypothesis? The hypothesis that the result is?
The result is that you would only have to please yourself mantra would apply.
Would apply to what?
Would apply to yourself. You would be creating for the sake of creating. And while you would be
but
getting
that
it
doesn't
out
necessarily mean it's going to please yourself. Because if you're reliant on an audience,
if the goal,
that's
if
just
the goal
it.
is that
once that level of reception is non-existent, then ultimately that artist is just making stuff just to make stuff. If they're that cut off from society or whatever outer influences could potentially tamper with their originality.
There's been a long while, at least in my case, where publishing, no one was reading it for a long, long time, but it's not like I gave up on it.
I feel like now's a good time for me to read my favorite quote in the entire world.
Uh-oh.
And this is a quote that I've been keeping in the back of my mind for a
Lock,
long...
stock, and barrel, people. Let's go.
Yeah. Here we go. Are we ready? This is from the fabulous Martha Graham, who is an amazing choreographer, dancer. She created her own company, and this was an exchange with one of her company members. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there's only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. No artist is pleased. No satisfaction, whatever, at any time. There's only a queer divine dissatisfaction, a blessed unrest that keeps us marching and makes us more alive than the others. And I feel like that's a really great quote that sums up this whole discussion. Is art is everything, and it comes through you, and sometimes it's conscious and it's unconscious. You can like it, you cannot like it. People can think it's good, you can think it's good, or nobody can think it's good, but that doesn't mean it's not. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean it shouldn't exist. Mic drop.
Swept the floor, dude. Rebuttal that. But again, no, we're not doing this for sake of rebuttaling. We're doing this for sake of exploration. That was very well said.
That's my favorite quote as an artist, because I don't know about you, but I'm never truly satisfied with my art.
No,
it gets frustrating at times.
Well,
like, why am I not good enough? Why is this not good enough? Why am I not a master? But even masters are like, I need to be better.
Well, but the thing is, I really do think that with age, with experience, that one can potentially achieve that. I'm not going to say error, but more so grace of not so much worrying about his or own skill set, but more to the tune of teaching others. And the most popular example I can think of is Bob Ross, because out of all of his seasons up until his death, he never once proclaimed himself to be even good. But people saw that. The proof was in the pudding through his paintings. There's alliteration. That is probably the most effective artist to audience relationship, because there was no one professing one's intelligence over the other. It was the normalcy in that, everyone can indeed paint. And while most people probably would agree to themselves only that, I'm not going to be as good, with practice, one can eventually reach their happy medium of, well, I'm not going to copy exactly what's on the screen or what's in the book, or, write like this, paint like that, act like this. I'm going to do it my own way. And I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for you in a performance kind of way, but when you went into college as a freshman, and you took drama before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You obviously had to take in from high school into college with what you knew.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you had to see other people, how they performed, what not to do. But, were there days where you beat yourself up over you not performing up to someone else's standard?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Now, through time with you being a senior, I can safely say through with what I've seen, but I want to ask you, have you developed your own theatrical standing where you can be, confident in it at least? You don't have to be happy with it because you're obviously going to be expanding on it, but are you confident in what you know now versus what you knew as a freshman?
Well, I'd like to hope I know more now than I did as a freshman. But what I think is really interesting about theater school or art school is a lot of people have this idea that you come out with this like cookie cutter representation of the school that you went to, and you come out with these rules that you learned at the school. This is how to do it right and this is how to do it wrong. When in reality, like, yes, there are some schools that do that, but in reality, for a lot of schools, it's all about trial and error and finding your own process. And so that's part of the reason why I'm going to grad school, is like I have an idea of what my process is, but I'm not done yet. I don't know. There's more out there. So what's really interesting is like there's a lot of different theater schools of thought. You have your Meisner, you have your Stanislavski, you have Uta Hagen, and it's all about like all of my classes. Not one professor taught a specific style. They said, well, I personally like to pull this from the Stanislavski technique, and I like to pull this from the Meisner technique, and I like to pull this and that, and so on. And so I got to learn how a lot of my professors created art. And the rule is you got to try it before you reject it, but you're then eventually allowed to reject it. And so, I really like this portion of this technique, but I don't like this portion. I don't want to go method or whatnot. So you pick and choose from these different techniques, and you figure out what works for you and what doesn't. Because just because something works for somebody else doesn't mean it works for me, and vice versa. And so that's also what's been really interesting to me is like I'm also a teacher. I've done mostly dance, but I've also done choir and things like that, teaching. I can't expect you to respond to things the way I do because I'm a different person. I've had different experiences. I've had different things that I can pull from. Like some artists like to pull from direct experiences, like in a theater standpoint. Oh, this character, their dog dies. Oh, well, I had a dog die. How did I feel when the dog died?
Yeah.
Like, first of all,
no, yeah,
from my own bias, it's not the healthiest method to go, but some people do that.
Well, I do that in publishing when it comes to writing because I like to kind of dabble in self-deprecation where the jokes come from within, and sort of like the situational irony is based upon real life experiences, people, and emotions that I have felt. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah. But yeah. So to kind of answer your question, I'm more confident than I was, but I'm not as confident as I can be. So everyone's artistic process is constantly evolving. Especially an artist, you're a forever student. You're an eternal learner. Even if you're one of the greatest of the time, there's always more you can do. There's more you can discover and evolve. And so being in school, or even not being in school, like watching other people's art informs you, and you take it in and you spit it out in your new ways. And so, like, even as, like, part of the reason that I went to the Getty Villa was for a theater class. Why am I, as a theater student, going to the Getty Villa to look at some old pots?
Yeah, it doesn't even at first it doesn't even apply to what
abstract, on a literal standpoint, it doesn't make the most sense. But then you realize, well, this person was conveying this idea 10,000 years ago. Not 10,000 years ago. I don't think that's accurate.
No.
2,000 years ago.
2000, yeah.
This person was conveying this thought, and I have the same thought today, 2,000 years later. I have the same opinion. Did that person puking in a vase on a vase puke in a vase? Yeah. Have I puked in a vase? Maybe. I don't want to incriminate myself.
No, it was probably
it's
at
relatable. So
it's probably at the frat house.
Yeah. Shout out to my ZBT boys. Just kidding. I made it to the porcelain vase. Thank you. But like, things are relatable, and so I'm now connected to that person 2,000 years ago, and so I can now take that into my art next time I portray a Greek play. The Greeks were not stuffy. The Greeks were also puking into vases. And so it's really important to like think about that and do your research, and you go out and you people watch and you observe and you look at nature and you see what other artists are creating, because then you interpret that and spit it out yourself. And so that's also what's really exciting about like the collaborative arts. So like some arts are a conversation just between an artist and an audience, and then some art is a conversation between several artists and an audience. And so, especially like theater is one of the most collaborative arts, just because like you have your visual designers, you have your lighting designer, your costume designer, your scenic designer, your production designer, your director, your music director, your choreographer, your actors, your producers. Like that's 10 people right there, even if you only have one of each. Your musicians. So like everyone's got their own interpretation of what the playwright, the original artist, has decided and is sharing with the world, and then we're all interpreting it. That's why plays get done over and over again. It's the same playwright, and if the playwright directed it, you could argue that's the definitive way the play should have been done. But like, we're still doing Shakespeare. Shakespeare's done. Oh, I think I read somewhere that there's not right now, unfortunately, thanks to the quarantine. But normally there is a Shakespeare performance somewhere in the world to some extent every single day. So that art is still being reinterpreted through other artists. And I think that's also what's really exciting. So that then goes into something you had brought up a little while ago, Sebastian, about like, do I copy this person? And that was a whole discussion I had with my art history class, was stealing from other artists. And you're like, oh, that's stealing? That's awful. You've got to be original. Nobody's original, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody's original.
That's a never-ending topic on this show for sure.
Yeah, so nothing's original, but then what is okay? When is stealing okay?
Copyright isn't real. Anyway.
We all steal ideas from each other, but then what makes it original is the way you present the idea. Yeah. So if right now I'm working on directing a piece about it's Susan Laurie Parks. She wrote 365 plays in 365 days, and I'm working on directing like a chunk of those for my class, and the chunk that I'm focusing on is entitled No War, and it was in response to the Iraq War when it first started, those first airstrikes in Iraq. And so, well, the Iraq War is like technically over. Technically, air quotes.
Technically.
But so then the question is, well, why do I do that now in 2020? And so it's like, well, I'm taking her thoughts and her opinions that she expressed, and now I'm applying it to the current wars going on, or the wars that we're on the brink of. And so now I'm stealing her work with credit, and then you're reinterpreting it for the times for your audience from your point of view. One of the best quotes in that play, in that article that we had read, I'm paraphrasing, is, if you don't feel comfortable saying who you stole from, you're probably stealing wrong, because you should be then interpreting it.
Or you could just put it at a disclaimer and say that this is a dedicatory piece.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
know.
That's what
Or-
I'm saying. If you don't feel comfortable going, I am recreating Van Gogh's Starry Night. But because every person is unique, every piece of artwork is unique, even if we're all conveying a similar message.
Well, so I think we kind of have narrowed down sort of our own views on sort of what art is. I guess when it comes to the art that we consume, that we want to consume, I guess what do you sort of define that? Because there's the art that we all kind of gather to, like, you know, your Mona Lisa or, you know, Starry Night, whatever it may be, Frida Kahlo, whoever. But then when it comes to art that's coming out as we speak, I guess what do you kind of gravitate to? If it's one medium over another, a combination of mediums, you know, it seems like kind of given all of our backgrounds, I would imagine we all probably kind of lean toward the art that is our profession, where we want to hear more from our contemporaries.
Well, what's interesting when you bring that up is different art is accessible at different levels. And
Yeah.
so, like, personally, as a theater artist, it's not as accessible to me as TV is. Human, we all consume various mediums. I don't think there's a single person on the entire planet that can say they've exclusively consumed only one medium. Because everybody is step split in the world, and they've seen architecture, and they've seen movies, and they've seen TV, and a lesser few have seen theater. We've seen visual arts, we've seen murals on wall, we've seen street arts, we've seen nature as art. We've read books for those that are literate in the world. So we all consume a different variety. Even the news and journalism is art, obviously.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean necessarily, like, yes, we tend to lean towards something that we consume a lot, or that our passions in, but not everything is accessible or is accessible. So, like, I can't go and see a theater show every day as much as I wish I could. I don't have the time, and I don't have the money, and it's not as predominant in certain places. Just like a visual artist can't go to a museum every day. But that doesn't mean not watching videos of theater artists in rehearsal and what goes on behind the scenes.
Right.
Or consuming theater as a student in practice and in rehearsals and through different processes. But so I think we're all consuming a variety of art at all times. Like, I'm reading a book, and I'm reading a news article, and I'm watching TV, and I'm painting over in the corner, and I'm doodling in my journals. I take notes in class. Like, we're all consuming art in different ways at all times, because that goes back to my argument of everything is art, including the couch you're sitting on and the glass that you're drinking out of. It's art because it could have been done a million different ways.
Yep.
So I think everything is in response to the art that we see every day, whether we want to admit it or not.
Or at least something that I know Sebastian and I have kind of huddled towards with some of our TV and film and literary criticism that we've had on the show, where it's almost as though there's an art form out of going after the stuff that's schlock and the stuff it's the kind of ephemeral thing that pushes you in a certain way, and you either get that feeling of, man, that really drove me nuts, or man, that really did kind of teach me something. It kind of goes back to what, Sebastian, you were talking about with Joker, where it's not something that you enjoy, but it's something where you can still see the movie and get the message and get everything that you need out of it. I feel like that's something that I think we grapple with probably more so than we can think, especially now when, you know, you have a worldwide pandemic, and yet you've also got a lot of people out there who are making great use on the internet of, you know, satirizing the pandemic. And it's almost that kind of morbid humor that people have, that they're able to translate it into something where you can have practically everyone laughing, but it's also a reminder of the crappy situation you're in. And in a way that kind of ties in with kind of one of our key points of our show is how art reflects back on society. And yeah, I think maybe it's people just sort of becoming more pessimistic and more kind of cynical as each year kind of goes on, and especially as this year so far has felt more like dog years, where we feel like we've been through 3 months of isolation when it's only been a month, and we've been able to consume so much negativity that it's negativity that's upsetting us, but it's also stimulating our minds. It's getting us thinking, and some of it's even making us laugh. And I think that's the kind of weird relationship that we now have with different art forms, at least art forms that we can consume today, whether that's something that's a product of this pandemic or whether we're consuming some other, plague or Black Death or, swine flu or outbreak or contagion, consuming some kind of medium that kind of affirms the life that we're living at the moment, but it's people that are seeking information and also entertainment out of it, even though if they were living in that situation, they would probably have a worse off chance of dying, just because that's how stories are these days. Especially Game of Thrones kind of revolutionized it of, who could die. And I think having that kind of cynical humor about our own mortality, I don't know, a part of me is okay with that kind of artistic thinking, but then there's a part of me that thinks, like, how far can we go with this? Or is this just kind of, I mean, it's clearly the new normal.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
I
Arthur Murray says it best. That's life. There's no other way to really do it other than to just grin and bear it until you can't grin and bear it and you decide to make a statement in whatever artistic medium that you so desire.
Well, I also think that a lot of the consumption of this type of art, especially in response to the pandemic, is it's comforting. It's comforting. Yeah. Like, we make a joke about, like, haha, sweatpants in my new uniform to work. Like, it's comforting to know that other people are doing the same thing, other people have the same responses, and that it's okay, and it is the new normal. And so it's nice to have that, both that comfort of, okay, we're all in this together, as well as the escapism that is art. And getting lost in various TV shows and movies and music and artists online. Something that was, like, really funny that we were talking about in theater class, or one of them, was about how everyone's so quick to reject artists and, like, oh, that's not a real job. Yet in the midst of this pandemic, besides the hardworking healthcare workers, who are they turning to? They're turning to artists. They're looking for them to almost save them, in a sense, that, like, I need an escape from reality, or I need to know that what I'm feeling is okay. So people are turning to artists to find that solace in these darker times.
Yeah, and I think too, it's, we obviously have a long ways to go until we start to see more, I guess, visual art that you could see, out on display somewhere, whether it's at the Broad or wherever it may be. I still feel that all of that kind of thinking among artists right now as to how am I going to replicate or acknowledge this moment. And it just seems to me like, with the way the arts are at this point in time, it in a lot of ways reminds me of something that Sebastian and I did once when we went to the Broad, and we started walking through certain paintings where Sebastian and I both kind of agreed that this doesn't seem too difficult. This doesn't seem like it's something that would really rouse people's attention other than, it's a red parallelogram. Sebastian, I think you remember this.
I remember it, yeah. We basically, we looked at it and we thought it to be just very innocuous, and I think back then, and in a lot of ways still do, subconsciously anyway, why do people, associate these deeper meanings with seemingly innocuous pieces? And at first I led myself to believe that people did it because they wanted to put on airs of sophistication, because they wanted to know what they were talking about, and because they couldn't properly validate it, i.e. the artist is dead, so you can't ask him or her. It kind of seemed like the see lazy thing to just kind of go with the crowd and say, oh, well, that's a good piece of art. Because I was looking at these certain pieces and I'm like, well, it's not speaking to me. And at the time,
But isn't that in itself a reaction to the art?
Well, it's definitely a reaction of me wanting to find something that did speak to me.
Isn't that then speaking to you, though? Philosophically speaking?
Well, philosophically, yes.
If you're reacting to it, it's speaking to you. It's not speaking to you in the way that you want it. And I think that's what's so interesting about artwork like that, is it's frustrating. Art doesn't have to be enjoyed.
Yeah, but on the same token, you want to be a part of the it crowd that gets it. But you know what?
Not necessarily. I'm not going to see theater so that I can be like, oh my god, I'm so cool. I saw Hamilton.
No. But you go into a theater, you go into a performance either having seen it, know about the subject, or more so interested in it, that it does give you that possibility. I'm not saying you would do it, but it does give you that edge over non-theater goers who are inquisitive to it, and that they may, turn to you and ask what something is. And I think people do get a lot of high from that. I feel like people do get that kind of adrenaline rush of being asked his or her opinion by an outsider. Oh, what do you think this means to you? Because
isn't that the thrill of art, though, is discussing what it means to you?
Right. But I think my problem is that they think that their opinion is the right one.
Well, everyone thinks their opinion is the right one. No one wants to be wrong.
Yeah, and my answer to that is fucking stop it. Because,
but also a good art audience is knowing that you're not right and you're not wrong. Because
but these people don't want to be proven wrong. Is my
no
problem.
Again, no one wants to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, there's also room for they can both exist.
Yeah,
both opinions can exist, and that's so exciting. In this
Exist.
conversation,
they can
both of our opinions exist. Neither one is right or wrong. We can't falsify. To quote Beck, what you said at the beginning of the show, neither one of us can falsify what is true.
And
that's what's so exciting about talking about the art.
We understand that. I think in very posh circumstances, that hypothetical person would not be swayed, though. They would be very rigorous.
There's always the elite. There's always the people that think they know best. There's the art critics. Right. There's the art collectors. There's the theater critics and movie critics, and everyone knows what's best. The food critics.
And it kind of makes me sort of interested in the whole contrarianism that they portray, because that also is a very lazy thing to do. And
what is?
Oh, every single review Roger Ebert has done, for example, by proclaiming everything to be a piece of shit.
But isn't that in itself? Isn't his reviews art?
Yeah, his reviews are art as much of his jaw is functioning.
It's soliciting a reaction, and I think what a lot of people don't understand is that art is just trying to get a reaction. It doesn't need to be a good reaction.
It's pretty vapid then if all you're doing is getting a reaction.
Everything is a reaction.
Okay, that's pretty quick. Like that's just kind of instant.
Art,
like the whole instant gratification.
Art is a reaction to the world around you, into the world inside of you, and viewing art is a reaction to that art. Everything has a reaction. What is it?
It's the fucking metadata.
Everything. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Can you tell me what law that is?
And that's not exclusive to science. It's true in every sense of the word. Like, I have this idea, the art is my reaction to that idea, and then you react to that art in the opposite of what my reaction is.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's... Again, I part of me is just wondering, because I'm looking at the time right now, more so how this discussion can end, and I don't think it can.
It never can.
And it never will.
That's why art still exists.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something you and I are going to be exploring for a great deal, just because I think, if anything, there's no sort of definitive answer, but also it's kind of like, you know what, we keep going, and who knows, maybe we'll be the message bearers of good news with whomever guests we hear from about the state of art. So yeah, I guess kind of wrap things up. Heather, first off, thank you so very, very much for being on the show.
Thank you for the thrilling conversation.
I guess, is there anywhere that people can find you on social media?
Absolutely. My main platform is on Instagram, so if you can give me a follow at Heather, Heather, traditional spelling, I know, _cat with a K, K-A-T. That's my primary outlet. I have like a personal Facebook. I'm on Twitter just to look at memes. So that's the main outlet. Eventually I'll have a website once I pop off and get some new headshots when the quarantine is up. But for now, that's the main way to get a hold of me. DM me cool things, topics. Follow my thrilling life in Pancake Fridays.
She gives her roommate's dog
a tiny pancakes
every single Friday, and
it's got quite a cult following. I'm just saying.
This thing's gonna keel over.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. So...
Yeah, he might have gained a pound, but it's okay. Yeah. So if you follow me on the gram, then you can see the lovely highlight of Pancake Friday. I don't know why I felt like that was a necessary tangent to share, but it's kind of the highlight of my week, highlight of a lot of people's weeks.
Dogs.
And it's my main arts. Thank you. The culinary arts meet the media arts, and it equals one very happy dog. So yeah.
Nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with that. Sebastian, you're next, buddy.
Sure. All right. So I keep saying this before I start, or as a precursor to. I kind of just, this is very sort of personal to me, and I just wanted to bring it up. And because I promised to do so, I wanted to wish my mother a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mumsy.
She just now discovered podcasting, like how, like, to finding it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say happy birthday. I love you. I'm so proud of you that you're working from home now, because she's an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
Real hero.
Really busting her ass. So
a hero among men.
I'm loving everything she does. But yeah, no. Happy birthday, Mom. And to find me, I'm available on Twitter and Instagram. Instagram is at Dr. Sebi. That's at DRSEBBY. Twitter is at Dr. Sebi as well, with an underscore. So it's at DR_SEBBY. Other than that, you can find me on Google at Sebastian Shug Publishing, and also on YouTube as well. I started uploading there. Sort of like a side project that I was working on. You could find me under Seabass, literally the fish name. So yeah, short stories, audiobooks, the like. I was actually almost considering uploading our episodes to there as well.
Okay.
That would illustrate video into the mix, which
those are how I like to watch my podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I know we were considering it. That's a story for another time.
Oh yes. I like that.
But yeah, no, we'll talk about that more. But go ahead, man of the hour.
And for all the good people out there that are looking for their regular Instagram fix of news, commentary, and complete absurdity, you can find me on Instagram at Mancini Ryan. And in terms of me finally loosening my journalism restrictions when it came to being pissed off about things and sharing it on Twitter like anybody does, you can find me at Mancini RA on Twitter. I'm thinking on Instagram, I'm thinking of starting to do like live streams and do like film commentary. I almost did that a few nights ago. I think it was this past weekend, and oddly appropriate. But I rewatched the Matrix trilogy.
Nice.
And a part of me regrets not sitting down and watching each one with Instagram open with just me saying, I love this late 90s corporate culture that Thomas Anderson is working in. And then all of a sudden his mouth is like sealed shut. Yeah, that commentary would have been fun, but I got some other stuff on Netflix and maybe TV shows and whatnot that I might like sit and pontificate over as I'm reading Dune and finding out that the hero of the book declares jihad on his enemies.
Jesus.
Which is something I could never have heard. I don't think I ever would have been able to hear Darth Vader say that in the prequel trilogy. Even though that he kind of did declare jihad with the Empire. Right. But that's really crossing franchises. One final note, and I'll let Sebastian say this. We usually have kind of a catchphrase when we wrap up the show. Welcome to Mars.
Oh, I mean, well, we're not there yet, but yes.
Well, she is. But that's the thing. Right now, it's Shawnee and Heather. We're the ferrymen. We're the smugglers. So that's
why I was reacting last week the way I was, because I'm like, wait, so we made it? but no. Actually, thank you for clearing that up, Ryan. You have made it. Congrats.
Oh boy.
She passed the test. But if there's any last words, any comments you want to get out there before we end things off, the floor is yours.
Just thanks for having me on the show. This was really exciting.
Yeah. No, you're welcome anytime to return.
We'll have to bring this debate back. No, I'm just kidding.
Episode 100. Put another 0 in there.
You've been listening to Mars on Life. Please make sure that you find us over on social media at Mars on Life Show on both Twitter and on Instagram. And on top of that, you can find this show on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Our artwork is done by Zachary Erberich, and our intro music is Space Explorers by Kevin MacLeod. I've been Ryan Mancini. My co-host, as always, is Sebastian Shug. And just remember, if you keep on going, you'll make it to Mars.